Hello, Endeavour. Friday's episode of The Fire Thief by Terry Deary is still currently floating around in cyberspace. So, let's try again. Here's Friday's episode, Chapter 24, The Courthouse of Eden City, Extract 1, because it's a bit long. We join the trio in court. What will happen? Let's see. The courthouse in Eden City. Yes, it's another cliffhanger. How will Jim get out of this one, you ask? It's like Thea said, there is a way, we just simply couldn't see it at the time. Looking back, it seems quite simple. What we needed was a writer to solve the problem, and in those days I was not a writer. I was just a very scared little boy. The judge had very white hair and a very red face, and he looked annoyed, which was not a good sign. This court is in session, he said quickly. You are brought to trial before me, Judge Jasper Coote. A few people had drifted off from the streets to see the late night show. We'd done dozens of performances, but this one was going to be our most important. There was a gallery at the back of the court where the public sat. The door opened and I saw a red-haired girl tiptoe in, holding the hand of a bearded man with a fountain pen. Word of our trial had spread quickly through the slippery streets. January storm had come to see me die. I hoped it'd make her happy, but she didn't look happy, nor did the English gentleman. She sat there with her pale face as Eden City fog and clutched a grubby handkerchief to her mouth. Her dark eyes followed every character in the room, in the drama they were acting out. We gave our names. The judge scowled when Theus said, Prometheus, Titan, and then started to speak quickly in a whining tone. Tonight I was at a wonderful party given by my friend dear George Mucklethrift. Not only was my poor old friend cruelly robbed of his hard-earned wealth, but I was dragged away from that party to judge you villains, and then I discovered that money from my wallet was missing. I am not a happy judge, he said. I knew I'd seen him before. He'd been one of the guests at Mucklethrift Manor, and he'd been the one clapping loudly after the performance of the uncle. The judge rapped his wooden hammer on the bench in front of him and sipped some water and went on. In ancient Greece there was a judge called Draco. I knew him, said Theus, nodding. The judge scowled at the Titan. Do not make fun of this court, young man. I will punish you until you wish you'd never set eyes on me. Now, where was I? Draco, Sergeant reminded him, and his boiled gooseberry eyes were turned towards Judge Jasper Coote. Ah, yes, Draco. This Draco said he could punish criminals by executing them, but thieving was such a horrible crime that he wished he could think of a punishment worse than execution. That sounds like a pretty stupid thing to say, but it just so happens to be true. Draco really did live in ancient Athens, and he was really the cruelest judge on earth, even crueler than Judge Jasper Coote, as you will soon see. The judge waved his hammer at us and said, I know how Draco felt, but the worst I can do to you three is to have you hanged at dawn in front of the courthouse, so the good people of Eden City can see what happens to rogues like you. Take them away, Sergeant, and have the scaffold ready for when 8 o'clock strikes. The policeman rose to his feet and spoke quickly. Sorry, Judge Coote, but I can't do that. Can't? Can't? You must obey an Eden City judge, or you will hang alongside these evil men. Why can't you take them away and be hanged? The angry judge demanded. Because, Your Honour, you haven't actually given them a trial yet, Sergeant reminded him. The judge smashed his hammer down on the bench and said, Oh, very well. Seems like a waste of time to me, but let's get on with it as quickly as possible. He turned to us with a look of disgust. You are charged with robbing the home of Mr. George Mucklethrift. How do you plead? Not guilty, Theus said. The judge looked at the ceiling. Look, young man, if you're not guilty, then we all have to hear your case. We have to get witnesses, gather evidence. That all takes time. And then we hang you in the morning anyway. It's just easier to say you're guilty, understand? Yes, Your Honour. You mean, yes, you're guilty? No, I'm not, Theus said. The judge glared back at him for a minute, and Theus looked back calmly. So, are you guilty, Sonny? The judge said, turning to me. Not guilty, I said, and from the back of the court January gave a cheer. The judge banged his hammer again in anger. Silence in court! Any repeat of that and I'll have you thrown out. He turned to Uncle Edward. Surely you are going to tell me that you're guilty? Uncle Edward looked very noble and he stood there, chin stuck out, head held high. I could save you a lot of time, Your Honour. You could? I could plead guilty, he offered. The judge leaned forward. I still have to hear the evidence of your friends, he said. You won't be saving me much time. What I thought was this, Uncle Edward said in a cheerful voice as if he was talking to a friend. You let these two youngsters go, I plead guilty, you sentence me to a sentence, and then we can all get to bed. The judge leaned back and half closed his eyes to think about it. Why would I want to let two criminals loose on the streets of Eden City? It's my job to keep these streets clean of vermin like them. Well, said Uncle Edward calmly, you could set them free, but throw them out of Eden City, banish them, and if they come back within 5 years, they'll hang. The judge looked at Uncle Edward with some respect. That's a good idea, old man. You should be a lawyer. I used to be, Uncle Edward said. That's what makes me such a good thief. That was the first I'd heard about Uncle Edward being a lawyer. I never did find out if it was the truth or if Uncle Edward made it up. But he had a point. The most dishonest person in Eden City was probably Judge Jasper Coote, not Uncle Edward. And you think I should let these two go? Oh, you have to, Uncle Edward said. Theus knew nothing about the plot to rob the good Mr. Mucklethrift. He was just some poor young man I met in the Storm Inn. He looked strong enough to carry the loot away, so I invited him along. But you won't find a penny of loot in his pockets, and he had no idea he was taking part in a crime. The judge nodded. He smacked the hammer on the bench and ordered, Set Prometheus free, Sergeant. Constable Drab, or it could have been Constable Dross, unlocked the chains, and Thea stepped back from the platform. He wandered to the back of the court where January shuffled up to her seat to make room for him. The judge turned his red-rim eyes on me. But this boy is part of the plot. You are known all over the country for your little scheme. This Jim explores the house before the robbery, and then he steals the loot while you keep the house owners busy. Please don't tell me Jim is innocent. Join me for part 2. Bye, Endeavour.